Hi, my name is Tiffany McGilvery. I am doing a case analysis on the Aviator, which is the video that I watched. I'm in class MFT 6102, and my instructor is Dr. Carla Hemisath. And the class in which I am is Psychopathology Diagnosis Systemic Treatment. And in this particular movie, Leonardo DiCaprio is the one that plays Howard Hughes. So the first thing I want to talk about is the rule-out diagnosis. This is one diagnosis I did. The diagnosis is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. It's similar to OCD, but so the first thing I want to talk about is one of the diagnoses that I did, which is the rule-out diagnosis. Although obsessive compulsive personality disorder is the rule-out diagnosis, it's similar to OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, but the two are distinguished because this particular disorder doesn't have any true obsessions or any true compulsions. The reason I want to talk about the reason that I feel that this could be a possible diagnosis for Howard Hughes. So the first thing I want to talk about is in DSM-5, and it's number 2. And it's a symptom. What it says is it's showing perfectionism. And one of the things that happens in the movie is that he has great success with this movie that's called Hell's Angels. And he has everybody applaud for him and give him a standing ovation. But even though he gets all that, he still feels that the movie needs to be tweaked, it needs to be better. So that could be a reason of perfectionism. The next one is number 2 in the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And it's also when they are attempting to build his plane, he feels that the rivets, he goes around and he feels the plane, and he feels that the rivets need to be flush instead of like sticking out a little bit. So he runs his hands across the plane and feels that it needs to be redone still, or at least the rivets need to be redone so that they're flush with the plane. So that's another example. Also, there's symptom number 3, where it talks about that he's excessively devoted to his work. So I just want to give some examples of that. One of the things is he's completely focused on either making his movie or the planes that he's creating and making. And it doesn't leave him much time for his personal life or any social activities, although he goes to some parties. But it doesn't leave him a lot of time for like relationships. So what he does is he has a serious relationship with Kate Hepburn, and in that relationship he's just not able to give her everything that she needs. And another example would be that he's also focused on getting the planes and flying them in the sky, so that he basically either has one night stands, or he ends up just using the girls for a sexual intimacy. Symptom 4 in the DSM talks about morality and ethics. And I feel that he doesn't really care about his morals or ethics, at least at this time. He does have many relationships, so that is a symptom of the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. The other symptom is symptom number 5. That would be criteria number 5. He is unable to discard or worn out or worthless objects. And the thing I thought about with Howard was how he gets attached to his tennis shoes. I'm not sure why he gets attached, but he wears his tennis shoes out and he wears them till they're really dirty. So that could be another symptom. And the reason for a rule out of this particular diagnosis is because he doesn't meet the criteria yet. I do suspect he possibly may have obsession compulsive personality. So he may not meet all of the criteria, but there's part of me that still suspects he may have this obsessive compulsive personality disorder. That's why it's a ruled out one. So the reasons why I've chosen this, again, it's a rule out diagnosis, and there's reasons why it's a rule out one. So I will explain those to you. He doesn't have the criteria in regard to this movie, doesn't have the criteria number one. He's preoccupied with details, rules, lists, order, organization, or schedules to the extent that the major point of the activity is lost. So that's one of them he doesn't have the criteria for. Number 6, he's reluctant to delegate tasks or to work with others unless they submit to exactly his way of doing things. And I don't feel that he meets that criteria. There's number 7. He's a miser when it comes to spending money for future catastrophes. I definitely don't feel that he meets that criteria. And then there's number 8, shows rigidity and stubbornness. So Howard Hughes meets a lot of the criteria if he were to be diagnosed with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, but he also does not meet some of them, which means that it would be a rule out diagnosis. Howard So it seems as if Howard Hughes does meet a lot of the criteria in the DSM with the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And some of those are 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7, which are the DSM. One example is he definitely wants control of the planes that he is having made. There's a lot of details, and he is watching for any mistakes that could be done to his planes or in his movies. Howard also shows a lot of focus and devotion to getting his movies and planes completed and finished. In this particular movie, it shows that his morals and ethics are very much in question. Of course, he is with many girls and many women sexually, and he doesn't really care about his movies how his movies get made or how his planes get created. He's actually okay with, in one part of the movie, I think he tells that he needs a couple cameras, and he tells one of the guys that it's okay if he needs to steal it. He just wants them to get them. So that would be his ethics. He's not necessarily a pack rat or a hoarder. There is his tennis shoes that he gets dirty and wants to keep them for his own reasons and not get rid of them. I'm not sure why. But these are all reasons why I would consider diagnosing him with the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I think it's a great possibility to even suspect that he may have this disorder, even though he doesn't meet all the criteria. The main reasons the diagnosis would have to be ruled out are there is some criteria he does not meet in the DSM-5. For number 6, he does not show reluctancy to delegate tasks. Number 8, I do not see he shows a lot of rigidity or stubbornness. And I also feel that he doesn't meet a lot of the main diagnosis that I will share. I see that he does actually meet a lot of the criteria, if not all the criteria, with the diagnosis that I will share, which is the main diagnosis I've come up with. So for the primary diagnosis, I chose obsessive compulsive disorder, which is OCD. And I know that it's close to the other diagnosis I just talked about in the name, but it's much more of OCD as far as like, I do see much more of the OCD in him as far as the criteria that he meets in the DSM-5. Howard seems to meet all the criteria for this particular disorder. He does meet, which is obsession, it's number 1 and 2 under obsession in the DSM. He definitely has recurrent thoughts or images of himself and his mother when he was young, and of himself in the future, where he isolates himself. These do cause him anxiety and distress. One of the images he sees recurrent of him and his mother bathing him with a soap that is enclosed, as well as the practicing of the word quarantine. The second one in the criteria is ignoring or suppressing unwanted images, thoughts, urges. He does this while he is in front of lots of people, sometimes in front of the girls that he's with. He does express to Kate Hepburn that he does have a lot of thoughts that he doesn't feel are the right thoughts that he should have, and he feels like he's going crazy. He feels as if it's like flying blind is what he tells her. In the DSM, there's also one called compulsions, and there's 1 and 2 of that as well. I believe he meets these. He has, and number 1 is repetitive behaviors. One great example would be that he goes into the bathroom and he washes his hands, but he's washing his hands so clean and trying to get them so clean that he actually cuts himself or makes himself bleed. So that would be one example. And then also in the same scenario, after he's done, he looks at the doorknob and doesn't want to touch it, so he waits for someone to come in so that he can sneak out and not touch the doorknob. So that's another symptom. The other one, behaviors or mental acts aimed at preventing or reducing anxiety. So an example of this would be Hepburn telling that she's fallen in love with someone else, met someone else, and to him at that time it's just the end of the world. So he ends up burning all of his clothes. I'm not sure what the reason is, but he ends up burning all of his clothes because of this. And I think that he does it because he feels that it will help relieve the stress that he has and maybe some of the anxiety. Another example is, and again, keeping his dirty tennis shoes. He may do this for preventing future anxiety or future stress. I'm not sure, but it's something that he does. It is for sure that all of the obsessions and compulsions he experiences takes up more than at least an hour of his day. It pretty much takes up probably his whole day, and it gets worse as it goes along. In this movie, it does not show him taking any type of medication, and I don't feel that this would be cause of any of the symptoms that he has. I don't see that he takes anything for it, so I don't think that's a cause. So next we'll go into what some of the treatments are for OCD. One is the psychopharmacological treatment. Effectiveness of this particular disorder, I will treat with fluoxetine, which is actually Prozac. It's an antidepressant. And this will also be treated with a certain kind of therapy also. And I believe this will help the patient with some of their symptoms, and it may have some side effects, but not as much as some of the other medications. And it's also going to help control his obsessions and compulsions that he currently has. One of the drawbacks, this particular antidepressant may not work. So I may have to continually try different medications or mixtures of medications to get the right mixture or the right medication to work for him, which could be a drawback. And then also, Some of those medications might have more side effects than this one, than the Prozac. There's psychological treatment. Exposure and response prevention is what I chose, which is ERP. It's kind of a new one. It's been studied, but it is newer. So I have that the effectiveness is, it deals a lot with his fears and pushing them back in your mind instead of dealing with them. Another of the treatments is psychological treatment. This one's called, that I chose, is exposure and response prevention, which is ERP. OCD is a lot about fears. They're real to the person, but they're really not real, the reason that they're having these fears. And it's also about pushing them back and not dealing with those fears. So I chose ERP because I hope that it's going to help this individual who has OCD with their fears, because they're actually having to face those fears. So I think that would be a great help to him. And then it also helps him refrain from ritualizing and doing the behaviors which are not being a positive effect on him. I think the drawback on this is that it is a newer type of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, and it has not been used as often as just the cognitive behavioral therapy. The next one would be for a treatment, family therapy based treatment. I chose CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And the reason I find it effective is that this therapy has been used for the patient and the family, and it's going to help them both. So it's not just going to help the patient only, it will also help the surrounding family or those that are trying to cope with it. So it's going to assist pretty much everyone that's involved with the OCD. And it's also going to help everyone have a more helpful way of maybe interpreting this particular disease and maybe in their perception of it, which is going to help everybody. The drawback of this is, although it's a therapy that has been used many a time for OCD, and it's probably one of the top ones that have been used, is that it does examine that the therapist who's treating him is able to help them in this dysfunction of thoughts and feelings that they're having, and maybe they don't coincide with real life, with reality. But I also feel that the drawback is the fact that the therapist is not able to focus or find the reason or the root of why they're having these negative feelings and why they're focusing on the negative feelings. And that's it. So that would be a drawback. The last treatment would be the biomedical treatment. Effectiveness of a biomedical treatment. It would be positive one because it does deal with the neurological portion of their brain. And it helps with the motor skills and the vocalizations, which may be a part of, and at times it might be uncontrollable. So there might be not anything they can do about it. The drawbacks though of this treatment is that the side effects may be a little bit stronger with this type of medication that they may give them. And that's one of the drawbacks, is that it might make them, I don't know if it's going to make them sicker, but it's going to have more effects on them. And also doesn't give them a complete explanation of the disorder. So they don't really understand why they have the disorder. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.